look at a work of art like a giant chalk sculpture on the ground or a pile of candy on the floor and think to yourself, so this is art? What exactly is the purpose of this? And more importantly, why should I care? Well, before we start having this conversation, I just want to talk about exactly what I mean today when I use the word art. I'm specifically addressing the discipline of the fine arts as opposed to applied arts, performance arts, or the liberal arts. But as I hope you'll come to realize throughout the course of this conversation, that the fine arts is actually a discipline that's very interdisciplinary, and its ideas tend to spill over into many other fields anyway. So for the past 3 years, I've been volunteering as an art gallery docent at the Art Gallery of Ontario. And some of the things I hear most from visitors is that they have a hard time figuring out exactly how they should engage with art, what they can do to understand art better, and more importantly, what they should be getting out of the experience. Well, statistically, actually, art museums have been experiencing a decline in visitor attendance for decades. And research shows that this trend is continuing in most major institutions. There have also been significant declines in arts and craft-related fairs and festivals. And research shows that over 1/3 of museum attendees are actually over the age of 60, and that less than 10% of museum and gallery attendance is composed of people under the age of 30. So I wonder, why does the younger generation, specifically millennials, seem to have such disengagement with the fine arts? Is it because we feel like art institutions traditionally are stuffy and old, or do people tend to think that art inherently is elitist and exclusive? And then I ask, is this still the case? And can this generation of people redefine the public's relationship with the art world? Because let's face it, today an art piece can be anything from a performance, a public performance, to a community event, to a social media posting. We need to stop looking at art as just something somebody else creates that we later just go look at. The art world, we need to realize, is something that we're all actively participating in, contributing to, and reshaping over time. So how do we contribute? What can we do? Well, let's go back to what I mentioned earlier about how some visitors feel that they have a hard time engaging with art. A lot of this is due to the fact that art, many people feel, specifically contemporary art, is kind of not always straightforward messages. It's kind of hard to understand. Artist statements don't always make a lot of sense, and basically, even artworks that have wall labels, a lot of people feel like it's filled with confusing jargon. And so these can, of course, be major barriers for people to understand art. Some artworks, they require context and backstory, and those are important to put into words. But not every single artwork is easily translated into written language. Art in itself is a language that we use when written and spoken words fail us. If an idea can be perfectly summed up into written and spoken words, then I would argue, what exactly do we need the art for? And that's why it's crucial for you, as the audience, as the viewer, to actively engage with the artwork. Your experiences, the emotions you feel, and the ideas you have are just as much a part of the artwork as the artwork itself. Let's take a look at some examples. The works by artist Felix Gonzalez-Torres is often known to be quite mundane and minimalist in nature. And I've heard people on numerous occasions say, how exactly is this art? And these are just mundane objects. Anybody can buy this at a hardware store and be able to place it on the ground. I've even heard people get angry that such absurdity, absurdly mundane objects are even in an art gallery. Well, let's take a look at one example. This is a work he created in 1991, and it's a pile of individually wrapped, multicolored candy on the ground. Now, unlike traditional artworks where you're not supposed to touch it, with this, visitors are encouraged to take a piece with them as they walk through the exhibition and leave with it as they leave the exhibition. And so this makes the artwork change in shape and size over time. And then periodically, the pile is supposed to be replenished, so this process can start all over again. And this is interesting because it makes the artwork change in size and shape depending on visitors' interactions with it. But that's not even the most interesting part. If we look at the subtitle of this work, it's called Portrait of Ross in LA. Now, Ross was González Torres' longtime partner, who unfortunately passed away due to AIDS complication in 1991, the year this work was created. And so we could look at the continual stripping away of the candy pile, the loss of weight in this candy pile, as a metaphor for Ross's weight loss and continual suffering leading up to his death. And then perhaps the replenishing of the candy pile is another metaphor for a symbol of hope, a symbol of memories of Ross living beyond in the memories of his loved ones beyond his death. That's my interpretation anyway, and you are encouraged to come up with yours. The feelings of loss and grief is something that we all struggle to put into words. And this was a way that González Torres chose to express his own feelings of tremendous loss and grief. His works are great examples of how contemporary art, instead of being alienating and sterile, are actually, in fact, incredibly relatable and thought-provoking. So some people also feel that going to art exhibitions, engaging with art, and participating in art is only really useful for somebody who is an artist themselves or somebody in the creative industries. So what would somebody who is a sciences, humanities, engineering student, what would somebody in another discipline or profession have to do with art, and what exactly can they get out of it? Well, I think about this a lot, and about a year and a half ago, I started a web series called Articulations, where I explore the interdisciplinary nature of the fine arts, about how art can in fact help us develop interpretation and critical thinking skills, how it can relate to other disciplines such as music, linguistics, or even astronomy and mathematics. There are endless ways the fine arts can relate to and explore the ideas of other disciplines. And here's just one example of how one artwork can be used to explore the ideas of history, materiality, geology, and be a tool of civic and social engagement all at the same time. So artists Jennifer Alora and Guillermo Calzadilla are known for exploring materials. So in an ongoing work from the late 1990s, they created these gigantic, oversized sculptures made of chalk. And so they were interested in the practical nature of how chalk can be used to pass on ideas, such as from teacher to students, and how chalk can be, and they were interested in the symbolic nature of the geological material of chalk itself, and how it's ephemeral and fragile in nature. So after creating these sculptures, they decided to place them in public areas all around the world. And the first location they put this in were in front of government buildings in Lima, Peru. Now, these were government buildings known for having protesters there all the time with messages and demands. And after seeing the chalk placed on the ground, people realized this was another way for me to visually express my ideas. So they picked up the pieces of chalk and started writing big words, physically and metaphorically, on the ground. There were political messages, commentary. People would write the political parties they supported, and then other people would come and cross it out and put the parties they supported instead. There were even expressions of love and messages that don't directly have to do with politics. This really created an atypical setting and disrupted the norms of the space. Well, in the end, the cops had to come, and apparently arresting people wasn't enough. They had to arrest the actual sculptures, like the chalk pieces on the ground. I mean, they didn't put handcuffs on the chalk. They put it in a truck and pulled it away. But it's interesting to see how a piece of sculpture, a piece of art, can really disrupt a space. And since then, this project has moved on to many other locations around the world, such as New York, Paris, and most recently Sydney, Australia, attracting participation and creativity from all kinds of people all around the world. So in a recent study conducted by the National Endowment for the Arts in the US, they surveyed and asked people, what are the major barriers for you in attending an art exhibition or project? And so 4 of the highest results were lack of time, the cost, access, physically not being able to get there, and feeling like they have no one to go with. Well, a lot of these problems can in fact be solved if we stop thinking about art as just going to museums to look at art. There's with the speed of online and mobile communication, the changing nature of contemporary art, there are so many new and different ways for all of us to engage with the art world and participate in art projects. We are literally no longer bound by the boxes of traditional institutions. An example of this is Art Prize. Every year since 2009, downtown Grand Rapids, Michigan gets turned into a big, public, free art exhibition. So artists from all over the world, anybody over the age of 18 can submit to this exhibition, and they can be from anywhere in the world. There's usually over 100 different exhibition locations all around the city, hosting thousands of artworks. Now, some of these locations are traditional art galleries and museums, but the majority don't typically host art. It can be anything from streets to city squares, parks, shops, and businesses. This really changes the dynamic from people having to go to the art into the art coming to the people. And in addition, half the prizes every year are actually determined by a public vote. Well, speaking of public engagement, the Art Assignment is a PBS Digital Studios web series hosted by contemporary art curator Sarah Ura-Scream. And what she does is she goes around the world commissioning artists to assign projects to the general public. It can be anything from make a GIF to become a sci-fi character, to make a rug out of old t-shirts. Well, earlier this year at VidCon, and physical convention for people of the online video community, the Art Assignment put out a message to their followers saying, hey, bring your rug to the convention and maybe a bunch of us will make a rug together. Well, more than a bunch of us showed up. There were probably thousands of people that came over the course of 3 days with their used t-shirts. And together we made, I would think, the world's biggest rug on the convention floor. And this was great because it was fun, it was collaborative, we made new friends, we bonded with each other. Most of us got to learn a new skill. I mean, I didn't know how to make a rug before this, and now I do. And while people have been collaboratively making art probably since the beginning of human history, a spontaneous large project of this scale was really made possible with the existence of digital communication. Well, speaking of digital communication, Ai Weiwei is a Chinese contemporary artist who's probably most well known for his critiques of the Chinese government. You probably didn't need me to even explain that. This picture kind of just says everything. But he has a diverse body of work that spans from filmmaking to photography to public art, performance art, sculptural installations, but I would argue most importantly, internet-based and community-based art. In 2005, he started blogging prolifically on China's largest blogging platform, Sina Weibo. And then in 2009, he started a crowdsourcing project after seeing what happened in the 2008 Sichuan earthquakes. So to this day, government officials still refuse to acknowledge exactly how many students died, or even any died due to shoddily constructed government school buildings. So after seeing this lack of acknowledgement and investigation, Ai Weiwei launched his own investigation with the help of his blog followers, collecting names of over 5,000 students who did die that day in the government school buildings. And to this day, he continues to call out the government on their human rights violations and lack of transparency. Well, authorities did not like this, so they shut down his blog shortly after launching this project. So whatever, he turned to Twitter, and he began prolifically posting tweets there. As you can see, this was actually 2 weeks ago when I took a screenshot. He has over 125,000 tweets, but even as I was doing this, he was furiously tweeting, so that number's probably way higher now. So then, recently he started another project where he's making portraits of people out of pieces of Lego. But then he hit a snag. The company Lego started to refuse selling to him, and he's now banned from purchasing further Lego pieces because they cited this corporate policy where, oh, we don't sell to people who use our products for political agendas, whatever that means. So after posting about this problem on Instagram, his followers began to actually donate their own Lego pieces to Ai Weiwei directly. And hashtags like LegoGate and Lego for Ai Weiwei began trending on Twitter and other social media platforms. And people have even since set up their own local Lego drives in support of him. If you want to help, we actually have a drive here in Toronto. So it's interesting because Ai Weiwei has not only sparked participation and people speaking out from all kinds of places. he's redefined the boundaries and the traditional definition of community. He's expanded it beyond traditional geographic boundaries. So I often think about how, when I was a kid, I was interested in art making, drawing, and doodling for, well, pretty much as long as I can remember. And then I think, wait, weren't pretty much all of us this way as children? Art making and artistic expression is such a universal language. It comes to us before even learning how to read, write, or speak. And so there's no reason to throw away that creative ambition as we get older. The modernist artist Joseph Beuys once said, "Art, everyone is an artist." Now, some people took this literally to mean everyone can be a commercially successful artist, making lots of money, and being represented by major art galleries around the world. That's not necessarily going to happen. But what he probably did mean is that everyone should exercise their inherent creative ability, and that artistic expressions are actually all around us. And if we just took a moment to pay attention to them, perhaps we can learn to appreciate them and maybe even become a part of them. Once upon a time, there may have been an ivory tower where the artistic elites sat, with no place here on the ground for the rest of us. Well, that ivory tower has been shattered. And gradually, people have begun to pick up the fragments, bending and twisting in their own unique ways. Which fragment will you pick up? Thank you very much.